What's up, guys? If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Also, please smash that like button on the video and enjoy the show.
All in all, in a simple way, I find myself thinking that the pyramids are not the best example of an ancient lost civilization that existed 12,000 years ago. I don't think they're the best example of that. And I think it's the anthropologist in me from like university is screaming saying this because you know other people would freak out if they heard me say this, but I just think it's slightly more likely that the Egyptians did build it.
Okay. So you have your canary in the coal mine.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at some of the graffiti holes there as well.
Yeah.
In your defense, the distance that they had to take some of these things wasn't too far. For certain things.
Only for the limestone. Yeah,
for the limestone.
Yeah. For the granite, they're taking it 500 miles.
And that's the next thing. The granite is the problem, though, because then you have a pyramid that's built a similar size or bigger or slightly smaller, whatever it is, than the limestone built from granite. That, again, I'll put this picture in the corner of the screen, but this boat is supposed to carry there. And I like you, I don't know how that doesn't sink it. If they did.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
You're also saying that, I'll speak for one of the examples you gave, you said could be a 20-year period in which it's built. And right now, again, I'm not looking at the number of stones that goes into each of these, but it's
like 2.3 million in the Great Pyramid, something like that.
2.3 million.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's crazy, huh?
2.3 million stones. In a time when there wasn't, allegedly, any technology to lift them. It's humans, whether they're slaves, not slaves, just workers, or both. Yeah. It's humans lifting this stuff. Yeah, I'm sure they're working every day. I'm sure they're working 12-hour days, sun up to sundown, whatever. But let's call it 14-hour days, 15-hour days.
Yeah.
But the idea that all could have been done in that type of time period with the perfection of not even being able to fit a credit card in between some of these crevices and to have it physiologically, like the physics of it, so perfect that outside the one example with the Cedars of Lebanon, potentially them needing to fix something, all these things stand perfectly today. Yeah. And weather all the storms the Mother Nature's thrown at them. It doesn't add up to me how that could have been built all in that time period, how all these could have been built in that time period.
I totally agree. I totally agree. All of a lot of that evidence, but a lot of those stories, which we call like internal evidence in archaeology, a lot of that comes from Herodotus. And so Herodotus? Yeah, I want to say this is 900 BC, or maybe it's like 450 BC. Herodotus is a historian that comes from Greece, and he visits Egypt, and he has all of these chronicles of his travels in Egypt, and he goes to see the pyramids, and he talks to the priests that are there. Now, keep in mind, if he went in 900 BC, which it may have been 450 BC instead. So, at the closest that he was to the construction of the pyramids, he was about 1,500 years off. He's 1,500 years late to the building of the pyramids. But he's going around asking the priest about it, and they're telling him stories. So that 20-year cycle, or that 20-year time period that it took to build that's just something that a priest said 1,500 years later to Herodotus, which we take as truth. So, it seems like...
Again, stories passed down.
Yeah, exactly. So much stuff is going to be wrong. Now, the great thing about studying the old world is like, when we're talking about the new world, it's very like, well, here and there, it's like, it's all so vague. In studying the old world, like, we know a lot, and there's
a lot more evidence.
There's just these big mysteries. So we're able to have like concrete conversations about it. That's why it's wildly more popular, because it's easy to digest, right? But a lot of these stories come from our understanding of ancient Egypt and the stories of who exactly built these. Like, we know the name of Khufu originally from Herodotus himself. He went and visited a priest. A priest took him to Giza, and they said, this is the pyramid of Cheops. Cheops is the Egyptian name for Khufu. Khufu is a Greek name, so his real name is Cheops, allegedly. But we just call him Khufu because that's what he's known as today.
Got it.
So a lot of our understanding in some of these names just come from what the Egyptians said later on. Now, we know that they had writing. We know that they were writing from the very beginning, and they had old papyrus, because we found papyrus, like the Diary of Merer was found somewhere out in Upper Egypt near a granite or limestone quarry. And this guy named Merer was like a chieftain who was working on behalf of Khufu, and he was picking up some kind of granite blocks in this, or maybe he was picking up turquoise. He was at like a turquoise mine or something. But anyways, they break into this mine. Modern archaeologists do a few years ago, and they find this thing called the Diary of Merer. And basically, this Diary of Merer is a ledger or a logbook of materials that were picked up on behalf of Khufu and were taken to Khufu's horizon. And you can look this up, and people can read it for themselves. So when this first came out, the archaeological headlines were like, "Ancient papyrus explains how the pyramids were built." But it doesn't. All it said was that this guy named Merer traveled down to Upper Egypt, which is actually southern Egypt, on behalf of Khufu to pick up these limestone blocks to take back to a place called Khufu's Horizon. That's all it explains. We have no idea what Khufu's Horizon is. Some people think that it's the pyramids, which some people think it's like the Giza Plateau where the pyramids were built. They call that Khufu's Horizon. Or some people think it could have been his palace, of which we've never found his palace. We know it did exist because every pharaoh has had a palace, but we've never found his palace. So it's kind of up in the air as to what that means. So, yeah, man, it's just, it's a whole like deep web of things.
What about around the world, though, and how we see these structures all over the place? I'm sure you're familiar with the finding off the coast of Cuba, vis-a-vis like potentially it being Atlantis related, and there are literal pyramids. I'll put that picture in the corner of the screen, but there's literal pyramids
that are like under the water.
Yeah. And that's all. I mean, that's in Cuba.
Yeah.
Right. And so, like going back to what we were talking about in the last conversation, the Phoenician conquest, allegedly, if that happened, was around when again?
About 950 BC.
Yeah. Okay. Around there. So your timeline for pyramids in Egypt obviously comes long before that conquest happened. But then we have pyramids that are alleged to have been built across South America. Now, maybe if the Phoenicians, who knew well of that architecture, brought that over there, it could have been built. And I'm speaking out of my ass right here, but I think some of the pyramids or structures of the like, I don't want to get this wrong because I'm not looking at it right now, so just correct me in the comments, people. But I think some of the pyramids in South America could be dated as old as well.
Yeah.
So, and then I'm also remembering something Matt LaCroix said about, and I'm going to get this wrong if I fucking try to remember it, but he said something about it's all built, many of them are built on like the same parallel within the earth.
Yep.
How do you explain this when it's worldwide? And I do think like the Cuban ones are like God knows how old, and they're 2,000 meters under the sea. How do you explain that technology is all the way over here and there? If we also, in the history we know more about, which is the stuff in the Middle East and east of the Americas, we don't have records of them coming from the west to the east. There's nothing that I can think of. Again, correct me in the comments if I'm missing something. But there's nothing I can think of that points to even theories that like peoples from the west were able to travel to the east and explain things.
Yeah.
So how do you explain the fact that the pyramids and the construction and even like the idea behind like the symbolism of it is so similar?
Man, that's something that I don't know that anybody has the explanation to. But what you're talking about as far as them being along these parallel lines, so there's this line that runs from, actually it starts, and it might go more north of Petra Jordan. Have you
Yes,
you heard of that?
That's like a famous.
Yeah. So
I'll put that picture in
Yeah,
the
it's
corner of the screen.
so this is a pretty interesting city, but I won't go too into it. But it looks like a city that's built for giants into the side of these canyons in the middle of the deserts in Petra Jordan, and it wasn't found until like 1912 or something nuts like that.
Yeah, it's a very cool looking structure.
So there's this line that goes from Petra to Egypt. It goes from Petra, and then it goes straight over the tip of the Great Pyramid, of Khufu's pyramid, straight over the tip. And then, interestingly, it goes over the, I hope I'm not messing this up, but I think it goes over the Rishat structure, if you know what that is. It goes over the Rishat, which, a lot of people now believe is where the lost capital city of Atlantis was. But it goes over the Rishat structure. And then it crosses over the Atlantic Ocean and goes through South America, through the Amazon, and then it goes right over Machu Picchu all the way to Easter Island. So, yeah. But then there's other lines that go in other directions, but I'm not exactly sure what sites they hit. Like, I think they hit sites that are similar to Angkor Wat in Cambodia. You've heard of that.
We talked about that. Was that Matt who I talked about? Yes. Yeah, that was Matt. We talked a lot about Angkor Wat.
Yeah, there's one that goes from Khufu's pyramid over Angkor Wat and a couple other sites. But that's kind of man, I have a hard time wrapping my mind around, like, is that coincidence? Is it not? Is it coincidence? Is it like a half coincidence where this is when, as somebody who's an anthropologist, this is the way I approach it, and somebody who's open-minded, where I can see, it's kind of did you see Oppenheimer, the movie?
I haven't yet.
Oh my
I have
God,
to go
bro.
see it.
You have to go see it.
Bro.
So there's a part where I think he's at Oxford, and he wants to start studying, I think it's quantum physics or relative physics, and his professor is like asking him, he's like, do you have what it takes to be in my program? And it's not like he says it's not about whether you can read or write music. He says, can you hear the music? Can you hear the music before it's written?
That.
And so with archaeology, it's kind of one of these things as well. Like, you get this, okay, like archaeology is puzzles. That's all it is.
Yes.
It's just like physics. It's like anything else. It's puzzles. I can feel the connection between two things. Like, I can feel a connection between why Jordan, the Great Pyramid, the Amazon, Machu Picchu, and these other Inca sites that are right there next to it, and Easter Island are all along this parallel line. I can't explain it, but I can feel that there's some kind of connection there. Now, from an anthropological, archaeological point of view, my first instinct would be somebody who's really interested in looking into this, and maybe this is something I'll do one day, try to find a definitive explanation for this. My guess would be all of these sites, we know all of these sites were astronomers. They all follow the stars. That was like paramount in the ancient world, even all the way up to the time of the Spanish. Like, Oriana used the stars to get back to Spain. So the stars were very important, and I would guess that there's some kind of reason that civilizations built important sites along these certain lines. Probably it has something to do with the way the constellations in the sky are, in the way people would align their civilizations in certain places. There's some kind of strange connection there, because, like, you look at Angkor Wat isn't as old as the Great Pyramids by any shot. We know exactly who built Angkor Wat, but it still falls on that line. So that's and then there's other civilizations that are like that, like in Asia. We know how old a lot of these are because the history was well preserved, but they still kind of follow some of these strange mysteries. And my first thing is, what's something that connects all of them? Astronomy. They're all looking at the stars.
Thank you for watching the video, guys. Please hit that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.